been working as a forest ranger for a little over 8 years now, and honestly, I thought I'd seen it all. Missing hikers, wild animal attacks, even some creepy encounters with people living off the grid where they shouldn't be, but nothing. Nothing prepared me for what happened out near Marker 17. It was early September, right before the fall rush, when hikers start flooding the parks for foliage season. I was stationed at Ironwood National Forest, about 130,000 acres of dense wilderness in northern Vermont. It's the kind of place where your phone stops working 10 miles before you even reach the ranger station. And once you're out on the trails, it's just you, the trees, and whatever's out there watching. There's this old hiking trail called Birch Hollow Loop, a 6-mile circuit through some of the deepest, oldest forest in the park. Officially, the loop only has 16 numbered markers to guide hikers back to the main path. But the locals, they have this story. They say there's a 17th marker that shouldn't exist. Supposedly, it only shows up under certain conditions. Nights with heavy fog, right after sundown. According to the legend, if you follow the trail past marker 16 and keep walking into the dark, you'll eventually come across a crooked wooden stake hammered into the ground, carved with a hand-painted 17. And if you keep going beyond it, you don't come back. I'd heard the stories from some of the older rangers. We joked about it at first, called it the Forest Boogeyman. But one thing stood out. Over the past 20 years, 7 hikers had vanished near Birch Hollow. They were always last seen near marker 16, and their bodies were never recovered. Then one night, we got a report. A woman called the station, panicked. Her boyfriend had gone hiking that afternoon and sent her a text at 6:43 p.m. It just said, "I think I found marker 17. No one ever heard from him again. The next morning, I was assigned to lead the search. Just me and another ranger, Eddie. We hit the trail around 9 a.m., radios clipped, GPS on, packs loaded. By the time we reached marker 14, I could feel the air getting heavier. It wasn't just me. Eddie noticed it too. No wind, no birds. It's hard to explain, but it's like the woods were holding their breath. We reached marker 16 around noon. That was where the official trail ended, and beyond it was just raw wilderness. There was no reason for hikers to go any farther, but I noticed something immediately. Faint boot prints leading past the marker and disappearing into the undergrowth. We followed them. About 15 minutes in, we started seeing weird things. The trees didn't look right. Some were bent at unnatural angles, almost like they'd been pushed down by something huge. Eddie said it looked like wind damage, but there hadn't been any storms recently. Then we found the scratches. Deep, jagged claw marks gouged into the bark of several trees, way too high up for any normal animal. And that's when we saw it, a small, crooked wooden stake hammered into the ground. The number 17 painted on it in faded red. Eddie stopped dead in his tracks. "What the hell is this?" I knelt down to touch it, and the second my hand brushed the wood, I swear I heard something faint, like whispering. Not words, just this low rhythmic sound that made the hairs on my arm stand up. We should have turned back. God, I wish we had. Instead, we kept walking. Past marker 17, the terrain changed completely. The dirt beneath our boots turned damp, almost spongy. The sunlight dimmed, even though it was barely past noon, and this strange fog crept in from nowhere. Eddie kept saying he felt like we were being watched, and honestly, I did too. Every now and then, I'd catch movement out of the corner of my eye, shadows slipping between the trees. But whenever I turned, there was nothing. Then At around 2 p.m., we found a backpack. It was half buried under wet leaves, coated in mud. Inside were water bottles, a phone, cracked but dead, and a folded piece of paper. The paper had 3 words scratched into it, over and over, in shaky handwriting. "Don't look back." Eddie wanted to turn around right then, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the missing hiker was still close by. So we kept going deeper into the fog. That's when we found the clearing. It was a perfect circle, maybe 20 feet across, surrounded by black pines. In the center was a collapsed fire pit, long cold, with charred stones scattered around it. And around the edges of the clearing, we found bones. Not animal bones, human. At least 3 different people. Some were gnawed clean. Others were cracked open, hollowed out. Eddie was shaking so badly he could barely hold his flashlight. We started hearing footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching on wet leaves. But no matter where we aimed our lights, there was nothing there. And then the fog thickened so fast we could barely see 10 feet ahead. That's when I saw it. Through the fog, maybe 20 yards away, there was a figure, tall, thin, wearing what looked like an old hooded coat. It wasn't moving, just standing there. I whispered, "Eddie, do you see that?" But when I turned to him, Eddie was gone. I called his name over and over, but the fog swallowed my voice. And then it started whistling, soft, slow, the same 4-note pattern, coming from somewhere deep in the trees. I ran. By the time I stumbled back onto the main trail, I was drenched in sweat and shaking so hard I could barely stand. I sprinted until I saw the ranger station lights in the distance. When I got inside, the other rangers rushed me, asking where Eddie was, but I couldn't answer. My throat was raw, my hands numb. The weirdest part, when we pulled the GPS logs from my tracker the next morning, they showed I'd never left the station. No coordinates, no trail data, nothing. I was suspended for a week while they sent a full search crew after Eddie. They didn't find him, not a trace. This happened a couple of years ago when I was working as a seasonal ranger. I'd been in the service long enough to know that half the job is paperwork, and the other half is listening to the strangest things hikers tell you. Lost phones, mountain lions that turn out to be deer, UFOs that turn out to be drones. You learn to take it all with a grain of salt. But there was one story, one that kept circling back to me from different people, that I'll never forget. And I swear, I still don't have an explanation for it. It started with a couple who stopped at the station just before dusk one evening. They looked rattled, pale, like they had seen something that spooked them bad. The woman leaned across the counter and whispered, "There's a man out there, carrying a lantern." I thought she meant a camper who had gotten turned around, but the husband quickly shook his head. Not a regular lantern. It was old. Glass panes, brass handle, like something from the 1800s, and it was burning blue. Now, I hear stories all the time. People see shadows and convince themselves it's Bigfoot. But what caught me was how specific they were, and how nervous. I made a note of it, told them we'd keep an eye out, and figured that was the end of it. Over the next few weeks, more reports came in. A pair of college kids said they saw the lantern bobbing between the trees near marker 12. An older man who who'd hiked these woods his whole life, swore a figure followed him along the trail for a mile before vanishing. Every description matched. A man in old-fashioned clothes, carrying a lantern that burned with an eerie blue flame. By the fourth report, I couldn't shrug it off anymore. It was late October, the time when the woods get that heavy, damp chill, and the daylight dies fast. I was making my last sweep of the southern loop when I saw it. Through the trees, maybe 100 yards ahead, there was a faint glow. At first, I thought it was another hiker with a flashlight, but it didn't look right. The light was steady, flickering softly, like fire, and it had that strange bluish tint. I stepped closer, trying to get a better look. That's when I saw him. A tall man, standing completely still among the trees. He was holding a lantern, brass frame, glass sides, a handle looped over his hand. His clothes were wrong. A dark coat that looked soaked through, high boots that shined wet in the fading light. And his face. I can't even describe it properly. It was like looking through water, blurred, distorted, like it was shifting every second I tried to focus on it. I called out, trying to sound calm. "Hey, you need help finding the trail?" The figure didn't move. He just lifted the lantern slightly, like he wanted me to follow. I took a few steps forward, crunching over dead leaves, and then, just like that, he was gone. The lantern winked out. In his place, leading into the trees, were wet boot prints. The ground around me was bone dry, not a drop of rain in days, but those prints glistened like fresh water. I followed them maybe 30 feet before they simply stopped. Not faded, not smeared, just ended, as if the man had evaporated mid-step. A week later, I went back with a camera. Call it curiosity or call it stupidity, but I needed proof. I set up just before dusk, near where I'd first seen him. The woods were silent, the air so still I could hear my own heartbeat. Around 6:30, the light started to dim, and then the lantern appeared. It was moving this time, swinging gently, bobbing along the trail like someone was walking just out of view. I steadied the camera, zooming in, and I swear to God, the man stepped into frame. Same old coat, same wet boots, same blurred, shifting face. Through the viewfinder, the lantern's flame burned brighter, almost electric blue. I whispered, half to myself, "What are you?" And then my screen glitched. The figure blurred, the image jumping like static. When it cleared, my stomach dropped. On the playback screen, the man wasn't out there in the trees anymore. He was standing behind me, close enough that the lantern light lit the edge of my jacket. I spun around so fast I dropped the camera. Nothing. Just trees, shadows, and the sinking dark. But when I played the footage back later that night, it was there, clear as day. A figure directly behind me, his blurred face tilting as if he was looking over my shoulder. I finally broke and went through the old Ranger archives in the office basement. Dusty logbooks from the 1800s, when this land was barely settled. Buried in one of the leather-bound volumes, I found an entry from 1874. It mentioned a man named Elias Turner. He'd been a night watchman of sorts, patrolling the marshlands with a lantern. The log said he drowned one evening during a flood. His body never recovered. Locals claimed they saw his lantern moving across the waters for years afterward. They called him the Lantern Man. I told myself I'd stop going back, that some things don't need answers. But that's easier said than done. One evening, I found myself hiking back toward the marsh at dusk. The air was thick with fog, rolling in from the low ground. And there he was, standing at the water's edge, lantern glowing like a frozen flame. This time, he turned. Not fast, not jerky, just slow enough that I could see the full shape of his face. It was pale, bloated, waterlogged, skin that looked like it had been underwater for months. His eyes were sunken pits, and yet somehow he was still smiling. He raised the lantern higher, and I swear I heard it. The sound of water dripping onto the dry ground around my boots. That was enough. I turned and ran. I didn't look back, not once, until I was locked inside my cabin with every light on. People still report him. Hikers come in and say they've seen a lantern bobbing in the woods, always at dusk, always blue.